and welcome to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show where we meet up and coming indie authors and talk to them about their recently released books. Hey there, and welcome to the Author Roundup. I'm your host, Jenny, and today we're fluttering into the world of childhood wonder and imagination. Brandall Laughlin is an author, illustrator, portrait artist, and professional photographer based in Oxford, Mississippi. With a degree in fine arts from Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and nearly 3 decades of exploring and expressing her creativity, Brandall captures the magic of childhood wonder in every stroke and sentence. Her latest book, Do Butterflies Make Butter, is a playful, poetic journey sparked by a question from her young son. And her answer will have readers smiling, dreaming, and learning about seasons and flowers along the way. Let's all welcome Brandall Laughlin. Hi, Brandall. It's great to have you.
How are you? It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you about your book. So, do butterflies make butter? So, that's just such a
Absolutely.
whimsical concept. Where did the original idea come from?
Many years ago, like 20 to be exact, I have four sons, and my youngest son was not quite 3 years old at the time. And I was out working in my yard, and he just kind of toddled up and he stopped me and he said, Mama, do butterflies make butter? And it just stopped me in my tracks completely because one, I'd certainly never thought of that. And I was so, amused by his question and the thought provoking nature of it and everything. So I literally stopped what I was doing and I scooped him up and we came inside the house and I sat down at the computer right then and I wrote the manuscript. And like I said, that's been 20 years ago. And that's the same manuscript that appears in the book. So it was inspired by my baby.
So, kids do ask the best questions, don't
They
they?
do ask the best questions.
So,
100%.
I understand that your son asked you about butterflies making butter, but why did you choose butterflies and, the idea of making butter? Like, is there a symbolic meaning behind it or?
Not so much symbolism in terms of that. It just, his question just grabbed me in that kind of way. And being a creative, different things hit you at different times. And I just immediately got this idea for this book. And in about 30 minutes, when, like I said, I came in and sat down, and in about 30 minutes, I had written the whole thing. It just sort of poured out. I don't really even know from where, but it just did. And when he asked me that, that's the first line in the book: do butterflies make butter? And then I followed up with, yes, absolutely, yes, indeed. And everything else just came pouring out, like I said, just flowing out of everywhere. But yeah, just obviously he thought about, made sense to him with a butterfly and butter, and it's just certainly a question I had never considered, but it did make for a good story. Made for a good
Right.
story.
Yes. And what I also like about the book is that it beautifully celebrates both nature and the imagination, like butterflies making butter and all that. How important was it for you to weave those two together?
You know, um, Obviously, like when I wrote it, I didn't have a goal in mind other than getting the story out. And it wasn't until I started the illustrations, which I did not start those until 2024. I sat on that for a really long time. And I just, as you mentioned, I have a background in fine art and all of that, but somehow I thought, I don't know if I can do this. It's such a
Mm.
personal project. And I really wanted the illustrations to be, I just had in my head what I wanted them to look like. And then, finally last year, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this. And so as I started coming up with the drawings, that took on a little bit of a life as its own, in terms of, there's some portions in the book not just the seasons, but the butterflies travel to different countries looking for the right flowers to make their butter. And so that gave me some inspiration in terms of what to draw, because the butterflies go to London and they go to Holland and they go to France and they go to Japan. They make all these places. So that made for some really fun illustrations. And that's been great when I've gone to read to children, libraries and classrooms and stuff, because it gives us so much to talk about, not just
Right.
seasons, because they do work through spring, summer, and fall. And then, like I said, we visit these different countries, and we get to talk about the countries. We get to talk about why they're collecting the flowers in these different objects. Like when they're in London, they're collecting them in little teacups and things like that. So it's been, it you would think that the two would go hand in hand at the same
Mhm.
time, but like I said, it was a kind of a process over a very long time. But same thing kind of happened with illustrations. Once I started to sit down and formulate what I wanted each page to
Mhm.
look like, then I kind of got in a rhythm, and that's what we have. So it's great.
Yeah, so the details and the intricacy of the illustrations, so that's an added, bonus to the book. I'm sure the kids would have fun just going through what's in the picture, and you have some hidden details there as well, right?
I do. My son that inspired the book, he has always loved farming. And
Mhm.
so growing up, I always loved those kind of I Spy books and the ones
Mhm.
that had something on each page
Right.
to for. And I wanted the book to be interactive, not just something the kids you sit down and read. I wanted there to be a lot of stuff to dig into. And so there's a little tractor on each page of the book. And there's also, because they're making the butter, they're, in the kitchen, on every page, I think except one, there's a butterfly that has a chef's hat on,
Mhm.
called a toque. So I get to teach the kids about that too. I'm like, y'all know what this is called? So they get to, I'll call on somebody and they'll come up, and somebody finds a tractor and somebody finds the chef's hat, and it's a lot of fun. They've really, as an audience, that has been very popular. They like contributing to the storyline. So
Mhm. Right. As for the words in your book, did you always envision it as a poem, or did the rhyming style just evolve over time?
the rhyming came, like I said, when I sat down, and I'll read the first page so we can kind of talk about that. Let's see. Here we go. Do butterflies make butter? Yes, absolutely. Yes, indeed. Butterflies make butter, and this is what they need. First, they need a lot of flowers, and not just any flower will do. They must have very special ones that are not red, pink, or blue. So it just kind of, it had a good rhythm to it, and I just kept going from there. And my imagine I imagined, the age group probably 0 to 8 years old or so, and it just kind of catchy, to have the rhyming prose instead of it just being a standard story. So I think it has a good rhythm throughout.
Mhm. Right. So, how about the butterflies? The imagery of butterflies working through the seasons, that's so vivid in the book. Did you do any research on butterflies, like their behavior or like that for inspiration?
Uh, I actually have I've known a lot about butterflies for a long time. I'm an avid gardener and all of that. But I did want to make sure, because as they walk through, fly through, I guess, each season, they're looking for particular flowers, and I did want to make sure the flowers that they're looking for in the spring are actually flowers that bloom in the spring, things like pansies and
Mhm.
daffodils and stuff like that. So then in summer, there was lilies and roses and dandelions. And in fall, it was chrysanthemums and shoot, I can't even remember right now. But I wanted it, to be accurate in terms of that. So it's definitely whimsical in terms of butterflies actually making butter, but there are some factual elements in there. And there's a page that goes through metamorphosis. So that's always a good one that I get to talk to the kids about. They learn a new word or they try to say a new word. Some of them, a lot of kids already know about that. So that's been fun too. But yeah, I wanted it to, like I said, have that whimsy, but it also has some educational benefits in there as well.
So you've told us that the idea for the book came from your son, and you both wrote and illustrated the book. And the words came first, and the illustrations were just done like how
A
many
year
years
ago,
after? Can you
yeah.
tell us why it took you such a long time to finally do the illustrations?
It's like I said, life kind of happened. When I wrote the book, I actually wrote 6 books right at the same time, and they're
Mm.
all kind of similar with a play on words. And so all that poured out, and over time, every once in a while, I would go back and be like, I really got to do something with these books. But like I said, I have 4 kids and run a business, and life got in the way. And it's also kind of a daunting task to try to figure out how to make this vision come to life, finding publishers and, just doing all that. There's so much legwork
Mhm.
involved. And, I want to say it's discouraging, but it can be that way just because it is so overwhelming and there are so many choices and it just takes such a long time. So I think I kept putting it back in the back of my head, but every year at New Year's, I'd make my New Year's list, my resolutions, and I'm like, do something with that book, do something with that book. And finally, last year, I was like, I am doing something with that book. And so I did. I finally, like I said, sat down and got my illustrations going. And that took 2 or 3 months, I guess, because there's 27 separate illustrations that are 2 pages each. So it just took a hot minute, but because I drew them and then I used pen and ink and then I watercolored them. So it was 3 steps in the process. So it did not happen overnight.
And we're so glad it finally did happen. So, yeah. So, Brandel, you mentioned in the dedication of your book that this is deeply connected to your son. Would you please share how that experience shaped the story?
Absolutely. Is it okay if I read the dedication?
Yeah, sure, sure. Go ahead.
Just special thanks to all of the people in my life who have believed in me, believed in this book, believed in my talents, and gave me the courage to pursue this dream. Your support, love, and counsel have been invaluable to me, not only during this process, but as I have learned to navigate a new and different world without my sweet child. The unwavering support has provided me with the determination to bring this book to the world and in turn allowing me to share my son with each person who reads this book. In 2016, like I said, that my son's name is Walker, and in 2016, he was in a fatal car accident. In August, it'll be 9 years next month, and it just as a parent, it's so important when you lose a child to find ways to keep their light shining and everybody always says everyone loved their child. Everybody loved my kid. He was larger than life and he lived more in 14 years than I think a lot of people probably do in 80. But he was very, very well loved and still is. But that kind of propelled me as well because I wanted this to be part of his legacy, something that endures. And that's, like I said, why the tractors are in there because he loved that so much and just wanted parts of him to be woven through that. And, that anybody who picks this book up then is picking up a little piece of him. And that's really important. You just don't want your children to be forgotten. So I'm just really grateful to be able to bring it to fruition finally. So it's been a journey. Like I said, it'll be 9 years next month on the 28th. And it was rough. It was really rough. Those first, I mean, there's still lots of bad days, but those first several years really were difficult to say the least. I don't really know how to put it other than that. And there was lots of relearning to kind of live again. So when I finally felt secure enough and everything to make this book happen, that was kind of a really big deal. So it's been a process getting it here, but it's also been a growing process for me. So that's been important too.
So it's tough what you had to go through. How did working on this book help you navigate grief and healing?
Like I said, it being able to put something out there that is going to endure for his, legacy forever. I mean, the wonderful internet these days. I'm like, the book will never go away,
Right, right.
and that's great. I'm glad for that because as his mom, I'm his historian, and so past me, yes, he has three other brothers, but I'm kind of in charge of his history and keeping his memory alive and his light shining forward. So, that's healing to find ways to further that, just to know that every time somebody picks this book up and if they read that dedication and they're looking for those little tractors, they take a moment and think about Walker. And that's all I could ever ask. I tell people all the time the gift of remembrance is the greatest gift that anybody can ever give somebody, especially a parent that's lost a child, but anyone who's experienced loss. It's just, you just don't want your people to be forgotten. So that's really important to me.
And your book is such a beautiful tribute to your son. So when you were making the book, I know the creative side of it all is not new to you because of what you do. But did you face any moments of doubt, perhaps during the creative process? How did you overcome those?
It is very easy to get in your head. I think probably for any job, but certainly being an artist, all you have to do to get in your head is walk in a children's bookstore and there's thousands of books, and you're immediately comparing. Well, does my cover look as good as this cut? I mean, you suddenly have this measuring stick that you're dealing with against all of these other books, and there's lots of books. I mean, there's lots of beautiful, wonderful books. So I had to just kind of dig in myself and not go looking for inspiration in that um, arena, just because that will, for me personally, that can just kind of, like I said, get in my head where then all of a sudden I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm not good enough, and maybe I'm crazy to think that anybody will buy this book or that it will do well or any of that. So, it was best for me just to sit down and let my vision come to fruition. And, sometimes I sit down and I look through the book and I'm like, that was a really good idea. I'm like, I'm glad I came up with that, so it's kind of refreshing to try to sit back sometimes and be a voyeur on your own work and try to look at it as somebody else would. And that's kind of helpful too. But I had lots of great encouragers, super friends and other artists and family that was all in and very encouraging. So that is certainly very helpful when you're getting discouraged and all of that, to have those people like, you can do it. I'm like, okay, I can do it. I can do it. So, and when finally got the cover of the book and that email, and then it was live and available to be purchased, I did kind of cry a little. And when I got my first box of books and opened those and got to hold it,
Mhm.
in my hand, I'm like, wow, okay, we finally did it. It's here. So yeah, it's been great.
So you might have already answered this. Let's talk about your journey in writing the book. And you
Mhm.
told us that, how long it took for the book to be finally done or complete. Tell us about some of the highlights of the process. You can talk about the easy and both the easy and the difficult parts when you were working on your book.
Um, it ooh, there's lots of different, frustrations that
Mhm.
come along with it. And part of it, again, why it took me so long, because again, when you do all these, you have to deal with all the publishers and the this and the proofs and all of these different things. It's not an overnight quick process. So you have to be ready to wait, to hurry up and wait, because from the time it was probably, I think, close to 11 months before, from the time I started talking with the publisher until I had a book in my hand, which may not sound like a long time, but it felt like forever, because sometimes we don't think people are moving as fast as they can, but we're also probably not their only client. So you have to be really patient, and indifferent for me, since I'd done the illustrations, and did the writing, that cut down on lots of proofing that somebody else would have to do. If you just wrote it and then someone else is illustrating it and trying to mesh those two things, that would be, I think, a lot more challenging. But it was just, like I said, it was important for me to finally buck up and illustrate my own book. And but yeah, I mean, really, I guess if I had to say, the most positive aspect out of it, the easiest thing was when that big box of books was at my back door and I got to open that box up and hold my book and see it. And then, when people started purchasing it and sending me pictures of them reading to their children, and, just their response to the book. And even people, because of course your friends and family are going to say nice things, but it's really great when it started to fan out past my core group, and to get that feedback and it be positive as well. And, start getting those phone calls. Can you come and speak at our school? Can you come and read here? And we'd like to have a book signing, just to have that community support. I live in, as you mentioned, Mississippi, and I've had a lot of events here, but I've also had multiple ones in Tennessee, and several things in Texas. I'm originally from there, so that's been great. And I know I had somebody message me from Idaho, and they're like, "Can I get one of the books?" I'm like, "You can absolutely get a book." And I had a friend read to a school in Delaware the other day. It's just, that's really rewarding, to have it fanning out across the United States. So I'm excited about that.
I'm glad you started to talk about the feedback that you've been getting about your book. Can you please share with us some of the most meaningful feedback you've received about your book?
Um, Most, certainly the people who know Walker, and I have one of his teachers, that he had in middle school. She sent me a video of her reading the book to her granddaughter. And it was really great because and she loved my son, as they would look through, you know, her little granddaughter would find the tractors, and
Mm.
she's like, whose tractor is that? And the little girl would be like, it's Walker's tractor.
Uh,
And, just to hear his name, that's amazing. And just, again, it all kind of intertwines. I mean, I always fancied that I would publish the book and do all of that long before he had his accident, but it definitely took on a bigger meaning when after his accident. So that was important. But everybody has been great. I mean, they have truly been great. And I didn't know you could draw like that. I'm like, oh, come on. I've been doing art for 30 years, but it's really, really been rewarding. And to have people be as enthusiastic and genuine as they are, and again, like I said, that when I go read and the kids are all so excited and wanting to find the tractor, find the chef's hat, and wanting to talk about this and wanting to talk about the butterfly they saw, and this, that, and the other. Being able to interact has been awesome. I really like that people aspect of this whole process. But yeah, I mean, even I've have fallen into several really great opportunities. When I was home in Dallas a couple months ago, a lady called and said she's friends, there was mutual friends in there, so they knew I was in Dallas, but called and asked if they'd had a cancellation, and she's the producer for a show called Good Morning Texas, and asked if I wanted to come be on the show and talk about my book. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, so that was really cool. I've not been on TV, but I got to sit there and tell this story and talk about my son and talk about the book, and share that with a very wide audience. And then that was really fun to suddenly get messages and be like, oh my gosh, I just saw you on TV. I'm like, I know, right? Wasn't that cool? So anyway, that's been great. And there's been lots of really awesome opportunities, and I'm really thankful for that. And I still have more to come this year. So actually, the book is 6 months old today. So I was kind of excited about that when I was like, oh, good. Our interview happens on the same day that the book's been out for 6 months. So it's kind of a little celebration.
Right. Must be amazing and so exciting that, the book has opened so many doors for you. So, what advice can you give those who are just starting to write their own book, like those who still aspire to become authors?
Um, one, again, I would definitely say be patient, and be kind to yourself, because as I noted, it's daunting because there are so many books out there, there's so many authors, and there's so many people trying to write books and publish books. And I mean, I can't use any other word except overwhelming, because there are so many choices and details and questions they're asking, and do you want to do this and that, and so to be patient, be kind to yourself. And I would certainly investigate. There's obviously three types of publishing: traditional publishing, a hybrid, and self-publishing. This book I did as a hybrid model, primarily because I was impatient and I didn't want to have to just keep sending query letters out and just more time, because I was like, you know what, 20 years have already gone by, and I want this to be done. And so like I said, I did the hybrid route, which was really a good choice for me this first time, because I was worried that if I did go a traditional route, that then I might lose the ability to illustrate my own book, and that was important to me. I didn't want to, it needed to be my vision, which somebody else could probably have done a beautiful job. But I needed to do the beautiful job. It needed to come from me and all of that. So it definitely, investigate the different types and publishing houses. Find the ones that specialize in your genre. If you're doing children's, or a novel or memoir, or whatever it tends to be. I just for sure do lots of research, and there are lots of, unfortunately, people who kind of dishonest. Kind of, we are in a society of scammers these days, and lots of people will promise you amazing things for $800 or $8,000, or whatever it is. So you have to be kind of savvy in that respect as well. So that would be my my current advice.
Mm. Okay, so do you have more stories you'd like to share to the world, like in this magical and poetic style?
I do. As I mentioned earlier, there's 6 more books that
Mm.
are all similar in title. They ask a question that is kind of a play on words. And as noted, they've all been written. They've all been sitting in that computer for longer than they should be. But I just started illustrating the second one, and I'm hoping maybe by the end of the year to have those illustrations finished because um, my dreamy vision would be, to have the series of 6 so that of course you could buy them individually, but there'd be a box set too, and just all the things, all the I want to get them all out there. And harking back to what we talked about in terms of advice, I have also learned that it is not for the faint of heart, and you will spend a lot of time and a lot of energy, and the return is not tremendous. You have to sell a lot of books. I mean, I'm making money, but I'm not going to retire on my book. So I would love to. And, maybe it will explode one day and that will be fantastic. But I think you have to be prepared not to quit your day job too. But it's really great to have the flexibility because I'm self employed. So I've been able to travel and go to these book signings in these other places and go to these schools, and I'm not having to take off work and stuff like that. So there's a lot of pavement pounding that you have to do, and it's time consuming, but it's very rewarding. It's just it takes a lot of time. So
We're looking forward to all of the 6 books to finally be out. I can just imagine what questions you'll be answering this time. So, before we end, what message would you like to leave our viewers and listeners?
Well, primarily, go buy the book for
Mhm.
sure. Um, it is available at archwaypublishing.com. You can go to the book's website, which is dobutterfliesmakebutter.com. You are welcome to visit me on my social media on Instagram or Facebook. It's not a book specific social page. So it's just my personal page, which is Brandall Laughlin. You can find me there. But Amazon carries the book, Barnes and Nobles. Um, Lots of independent bookstores have it. And if they don't, they can order it for you, which is awesome. But, and again, if you're someplace and you want me to come read, then I'm happy to load up and come do a book event. I had a great one in Dallas not long ago that was at the library there, and we did a craft afterward, and I had all the children planted their own little butterfly garden, so that was great. So they will have yellow flowers, which you have to make your butter. But anyway, so everybody got to go home with a little pot of flowers to watch and take care of and stuff like that. So I really, as I mentioned, I really like the interactive aspect of getting with the people and getting down on the floor and looking at the book and letting the kids climb everywhere and point it all out and all that kind of stuff. It's just, I think it's great. I mean, to let children be a little unrestrained, because there's plenty of times that they're not getting to do that these days. But yeah, so I'm here. I'm available to read, write, whatever you want. Um, but yeah, hopefully you will be curious enough to head out and buy the book.
And your website?
The book website is called dobutterfliesmakebutter.com.
Mhm.
I also have a personal website that showcases my other artwork and photography work, and that's brandalllaughlin.clickbook.com. You can find me there and see all the other things I do when I'm not pushing books and doing illustrations and all that good stuff.
So, thank you so much, Randall. That was such a delightful conversation. Thank you for sharing the heart behind your book, Do Butterflies Make Butter? And of course, the beautiful inspiration from your son. So it's such a charming book, and we're so glad you could share it with us. And if you'd like to bring a little wonder and whimsy into your home, you can go get Do Butterflies Make Butter? Written and illustrated by Brandall Laughlin in softcover, hardcover, and ebook formats. Available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, and of course, Archway Publishing's online bookstore and all other resellers. And so, to everyone tuned in, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time on the Author Roundup.